Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. I got Michael Zuber with One Rental at a Time YouTube channel and author, real estate investor, the man when it comes to understanding what's happening and trying to get your rental incomes. Michael, please introduce yourself and kind of let us know a little bit about what you do and your style here.
Yeah, so Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. My story starts probably like a lot of your viewers, 20 some years ago. I got my head handed to me in the stock market. I lost 80% of my my cash, right? When I got busted out in the .com crisis. I felt like I don't know. I just felt bad, right? I'd lost all of this after, stacking from $7,000 to over 200 and to see 80% of that lost. I didn't know what to do. So I remember stumbling into a physical bookstore. Yes, I am that old. Right there on Stevens Creek in Cupertino, I think. And I found a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a book that introduced a concept I had never heard of, which is really interesting, Simon. So I have an economics degree and an MBA, and this little stupid purple book introduced me to the idea of rental properties. I'm 30 years old, an advanced degree, an accountant for heaven's sakes, and I'd never heard of rental properties. And a light went on. I'm not Warren Buffett. The stock market is a casino. Crypto's a casino. But I can go learn real estate. So something I've come to realize is real estate investing. It's slower moving. The average person can learn their area, what I call a buy box. And once you know average, Simon, the world's your oyster. It takes time. It takes consistency. But once you know average, you can do great deals. I'm like everybody else. I can only do one deal every couple of years. And that's what we did. And, our portfolio grew over time. We started back in 2002. So we had the run up. We got to 9 houses, like late 06 or 8 units. And I was trying to buy the 9th house and I couldn't because I'm a numbers guy. I'm like, how the hell are people paying these stupid prices and making the numbers work? Because I couldn't find cash flow because everybody was doing neg am and all these stupid loan products. So what we did is we went to a real estate meetup led by Bruce Norris, a legendary Southern California investor who's now in Florida. And he introduced a concept called the affordability index. And the affordability index changed our life because my market was flat out unaffordable. And we did what's called a 1031 exchange. What that basically means is we sold a house and we moved all of the equity into apartment buildings. So we went from 8 homes to 80 units in about 8 months. And then the crash happened. And we were very happy we made that move. So yeah, I'm just a W-2 employee who busted his ass, lived below his means, made a couple of very good moves during, the last 20 years and been financially free for well over 5 years. So that's my nutshell story.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that first, because a lot of people we're new to the game. Like I have no idea what it is that I'm doing. I am just like, okay, I'm trying to figure out this whole rental thing. Everybody's talking about housing market crash, all kinds of stuff. Tell me about that very first house that you experienced. What was the market like at the time? Tell me about that whole experience, because you're new to it. Like you're scared, right? You're nervous about the whole thing.
Yeah, again, new to the market. And again, so this is really important. So I spent a year. So I live in the Bay Area, right? Silicon Valley. I spent a year, Simon, trying to figure out where cash flow was in my market. It doesn't exist. I live in a stupid, expensive part of the world. And I wasn't going to buy something hoping for appreciation. Lots of people did, and they got their asses handed to them. So first off, I wasted a year. But I took my discipline, my notion of a buy box to a market 2.5 hours away, Fresno, California. It's 2.5 hours one way. So I bring that up because sometimes you've got to go out of your area, right? If you live in, Palo Alto, California, you're not going to find cash flow. So I say that first. So we went to Fresno. I didn't know anybody. It's 1 million people. So we just started looking at one little pocket. We found this property. You can look it up on Zillow if you would like, called 1818. So 1818 Norris Drive East, 93703. You always remember your first one. We bought it for 107 grand and it rented for 1,100. So back in the day, I followed the 1% rule. I no longer follow that, but this is what I did in 2002. And we were happy as a clam. We put 20% down. We got a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at like 6.25%, and it cash flowed like 150 bucks. And oh, by the way, I had to pay a property manager because, again, remember, 2.5 hours away. I don't know anybody. I had a job that flew me all around the world. So I had to have a property manager day one. So we were ecstatic. And then if you read my book, you will see that that did not last long. The tenants that we moved in, good credit, good jobs, good references. Simon, they ended up getting a divorce 2 weeks after moving in. The wife takes off. The husband decides to become a professional alcoholic. Never pays rent, never pays rent. In California, that's unfortunate because it takes me 3 months to get him out. We go back to that property 4 months after closing, and there's new $15,000 in damage. Yeah, that hurt. That sucked.
This is your first property that you were doing.
First property in a city that I didn't know anybody. I walked into that property, Simon, ready to, and remember, I had just lost 160 grand. Now I'm walking into this house 4 months later, 5 months later, going, honey, I did it again. I lost more of our money. I remember, so my wife's name's Olivia. I remember walking into that house being disgusted, disappointed, and going, I'm hurting my family. I'm doing something wrong. And Olivia looks at me and says, did we do anything wrong? And I'm like, no, honey, we checked for it. There's no box on the rental application that says, are you going to get a divorce? Right? Yeah. That it's never been a box on an app I've ever seen. So other than that one little piece, there's nothing we did wrong. So she says to me, and I give her full credit, let's try it one more time. That changed our trajectory because that house, North Drive, we move a new tenant in, no problems. We sell it, again, go to ZELLE, we sell it for 263 grand. We bought it for 107. We sold it for 263 less than 3 years later. We 1031 that money into an apartment building we still own today. So that one conversation from the amazing Olivia set us on a new trajectory because I was ready to quit, Simon. I was like, people suck. And I was ready to give up. But, you know, the story turns around. And thankfully now I've had thousands of tenants. I have 2 crazy, nasty stories. Unfortunately, the first one is one of those. And then I have another one a decade later in an apartment building. But yeah, so it's okay. But that was rough.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that I hear consistently amongst people who have been successful at just about anything is that they almost always have an experience of some very hard failure in the early days. And I mean, I think it's almost like a test to see if whether or not you're going to do it, because you really have to be passionate about something that you're going to be successful at. And you're going to get tested in that fashion where it's just like, okay, here, let's just take it all from you and see if you're going to do it, you know? And
I agree 1,000%.
You know, and I think it's like how we react to that situation. Like it can be devastating. We can just be heartbroken over it and get depression and stuff like that. But we got to remember that, you know, it's just going to be temporary and that we actually have to do something about this and not just cry about it. And, you know, I think that's where, you know, it's really like important to understand that, you know, even though you wanted to quit, you know, you teamed up again and you're like, no, let's try this, you know, let's make this happen. We can do this. And that's really where the success comes in. It was just like, okay, well, you passed the test, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I really do think, real estate, I mean, it's one of the rules I talk about. You'll have bad days. The idea is you have to learn and move on. You're going to make mistakes in this game. The longer you're in it, they're going to happen. The key is, Simon, never make the same mistake twice. The expensive mistake is the second time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, again, like, not to keep, you know, going back to this first house, but,
Please.
You know, the environment was a little bit different back then. What was happening with prices? What was happening with real estate? What got you to even think about getting a rental then? And then why did you not get rental at some point? Like, what was like the environment looking like where you said, okay, this is it. I'm backing away from all this right now altogether. So
Yeah.
that
So
first house, what was it like?
yeah. So 2002 was a seller's market. For example, when we finally got down to Fresno after learning the market, there was only one house available, right? Because again, we had a very small buy box that we were looking at. It's called 93703, the Mayfair district. And it was a pretty hot market. It wasn't crazy hot like 2020 or 2021, but it was probably like, I don't know, probably like 2019, maybe early 2020. There was just no inventory. So we went down there hoping to see 5 or 6 properties. We saw one. It happened to hit our 1% rule, so we bought it. And yeah, so the market was pretty hot. Rates were over 6. We did 20% down. Rents were flat. That first house for the first 3 years, rents didn't go up, so rents were stable. 1,095, called 1,100. A lot of competition. A lot of people were coming. Real estate was just getting hot. It would get really hot in 05, 06. But 2002, late 02, I think we bought it in December. It was pretty competitive. There's just no inventory.
And so when, between that first house and today, when was the worst market that you would be buying in? Like you were like just totally backed away saying, I am not touching any of this stuff. What time frame was that? What timeline? Or maybe there was a couple of times,
Yeah, we've been doing this 22 years. There's been a couple of times we've pivoted. So we tried to buy our 9th house, our 9th property. I want to say it was late 06, and the numbers didn't work. So we spent the next 7 to 8 months selling all our houses. I'm like, hey, if you guys want to pay stupid prices for these, take them. And we moved our equity into apartments. So we were sitting in apartments 07, 08, where all the craziness was going on. We didn't buy anything in 2009 because our market rolled over. Again, I'm in Fresno, California, Simon. Our market fell 75%. Houses.
Oh,
75.
like that's in price?
Price.
Wow.
Price. Yeah, you can go look at the charts. I mean, go look at Norris Drive. We buy it for 107, sells for 263. I think it goes as high as 300. And the next time it sells was 75 grand.
Oh my goodness.
So
Incredible.
we were really happy to be in apartments because again, apartment value went down, but rents went up. So we didn't buy any houses. We start buying houses again in 2010. But I didn't know where the bottom was. I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't know how bad. So we bought our first foreclosure in 2010 for 150 grand. Our last foreclosure we bought for 25 grand, 28 grand. Wow. 2.5 years later. So we bought the whole way down, just one at a time. And yeah, and then the market bounced when the hedge funds came in or private equity came in, and we were pretty happy to be buying the whole way down.
Yeah, that's like, the prime opportunity. It's kind of funny to think about dollar cost averaging into houses.
Yeah, you just don't know where I mean, I look back at it now going, why the hell did I buy, Simpson for 150 when if I would have waited 6 months, I could have had it for 90, but I didn't know where the bottom was, right? The last dozen houses we bought for land value. I mean, I can't believe there was nobody shopping in 2010, 11. Everybody thought these things were going to zero, which I never understood because I looked every day. I mean, that house I bought for 28 grand on Pine, there was a house on it. It wasn't a lot. There was a structure on it. So it was kind of funny to think about.
Yeah. And so over the last couple of years, this has gotten really intense. Like the market is just absolutely crazy. And there is so much confusion, so much talk about this. And, there's a lot of reasonings that has brought this market to the height that it is. And, I can get into all the things that I kind of believe as far as what I think is happening with the housing market. But from somebody who is in the game, this is your life, this is your passion. What's going on here over the last couple of years? What are we heading to? Is this your opportunity or what? What's happening here?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. Again, I've been looking at this game every day for almost 25 years, right? So again, I can talk about my market of Fresno, California. I can talk about the Silicon Valley, and then generally the country. I can't talk Vegas or Phoenix or any other market. So generally speaking, I think what happened in the early part of the 2020s is we had, this is crazy. People don't really realize this until they do the math. in 2021, it was the second most affordable market to buy a home. 2021. People don't understand that. When people were calling for a housing crash in 2021, it was the second most affordable.
And what do you
And
mean by that it was the second most affordable? And explain that. How is that?
Affordability, well, this is the thing that saved me in 2006, is a metric that is made up of 3 variables: price, interest rate, and median income. Of those 3 variables, interest rates went down to sub 3%. And I've done the math all the way back every year to 1970. So 52 years of history. 2021 was the second best year, 2010 being the best year, just in case somebody wanted to ask. 2021 was the second best year because interest rates were sub 3%. You're a perfect example of this. You have a home today with a ridiculously low interest rate, which means your payment is a 4-bedroom house payment is the cost of rent for a 1 or 2 bedroom. So if you bought a home in 2021, you won. I want to say you have 30-year money for less than the federal government has overnight rates. You won. But there's a problem. The housing market, Simon, is now broken. What do I mean by that? Well, the housing market needs buyers and sellers. We now have sellers like yourself who are locked in. You might want to move, but you can't. You might want to upgrade, but you can't. So we have the normal order of move-up buyers, right? I think there's first-time buyers, move-up buyers, and luxury buyers. The move-up market is dead because the move-up market is the most important market to watch because you are two transactions. You are a sell and a buy. If that market dies, transactions crash, which is exactly what happened. So that's what's going on. So I think what we've had, generally speaking, is if you average the decade of 2020, our average home appreciation is going to be kind of statistically the same, 4 or 5%. Unfortunately, we had most of that appreciation early. So the next 3 to 5 years are going to be flat, boring, plus or minus 1%. Because again, housing is inelastic. It doesn't move. It's sticky. And now we have no buyers and sellers. I do think there are deals, Simon, in the luxury market. I think the luxury market is in a lot of trouble. If you happen to be in a situation where you could buy a luxury home, you're gonna get a huge discount. But all that does is move up the median price because that's how the median is calculated. So, and then first-time home buyers, no inventory. They can't build them, so there's no supply coming. The people that have them aren't going to move up because the move-up buyer would sell a first-time home and then buy a bigger home. It's just going to be a market where we do 4 million transactions instead of 7. And what most people realize is, so they talk about supply and demand, right? Economics 101. But what people don't realize is the demand curve is shifted. We averaged 6.5 million sales for a decade. We're now going to do 4 million. That demand curve with no supply means prices, generally speaking, will be boring and flat. Now, Phoenix, you're in trouble. Vegas, you're in trouble. Austin, maybe. Any market that was distorted by iBuyers, you have some pain. But most markets aren't distorted by iBuyers. That's my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And, kind of what I see, with the, from the experience of me just watching like what happened during the pandemic, everything that happened with like the forbearance, the lack of foreclosures, bringing inventory in, to me, like that whole pandemic and the stimulus package really was a bailout of the housing market, like to prevent it from crashing. And when you tell everybody that you don't have to pay your mortgage or rent or worry about getting kicked out, and then there's no inventory and everybody wants to move and the prices move up so high, there's going to be an opportunity for people to just sell out of their house and not have to worry about making those back payments on their forbearance or anything like that. So it's like, to me, the whole idea of a housing market crash really was pretty much covered up and saved by the pandemic and those stimulus packages that were out there. Now, I look at like again, the sales that are happening, right? And the lack of sales that are basically out there. And everybody I talk to, like I'm one of them, right? I mean, I want to position myself to be able to take advantage of a housing market downturn. And everybody I talk to, like everybody is saying the exact same thing, right? That they're all getting ready for this housing market downturn. And to me, like when I'm standing in the middle of the herd and I'm hearing everybody chattering the exact same thing, I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm out of here, right? And that's what I have a tendency to do. So I'm no longer like saying I'm going to wait for this housing market crash. Is now the opportunity to do this, because really you want to be greedy when people are fearful, right?
Yeah.
So everybody's in fear. Huh. How do I get greedy about this? So is right now our opportunity or not?
Well, so it depends where you're shopping.
Okay.
So again, I am remarkably consistent. I believe the only goal of a new investor, which I'll include you in, is you must do the work. You must figure out what average is for whatever your buy box is, right? We talked about this, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. That takes time. I believe real estate investing is a skill. And because it's a skill, it can be learned. But it takes time, just like a golf swing. It's uncomfortable. You don't understand. You got to dig in. But I believe it's always a great day to do a great deal. Now, that's a cute saying, but what does it mean? Here's what it means. You're going to spend 60 or 90 days learning average in your market. And let's just pretend average is a 6% yield. You're going to buy a rental that will produce 6% on the cash you invest. That's average. That is step one. Now that we know average, I never expect anybody to be average. I want you to be great. So if average is 6, you're going to go get 9% yield. I believe you should be writing offers once you've done the work. I don't rush, don't gamble, don't be stupid. Only 30-year fixed rate debt, no adjustable. Don't put your spreadsheet up to get a deal. But if your average is 6, write every offer at 9%, and eventually you'll get one. It's hard. It takes work. You're going to do this every day for a year, probably write a dozen offers, get 3 counters, but you'll probably get a deal. And it'll be a great deal. That's the magic. People don't want to work, Simon. Everybody wants the goddamn easy button. Yep. Everybody's waiting for somebody to fucking ring the bell about the bottom. It ain't there. Do the work today. Go be better than everybody else and get great deals. It takes work. That's why I wear the hat.
Yep. And that's, and that's why I love the answer that you gave, man, because that's exactly it. Like no matter what, I try and get you to time it, say, hey, man, where's the magic secret, whatever. It's not. It's a formula.
It's math.
Straight up.
Math.
It's math. And that's really and that's where it comes down to, is that when people say, oh, man, you're going to lose out, you're going to whatever, it's just like, just do this math, and understand like the conditions of the environment of it. And man, it's almost like a computer program could really do it, right?
It could. Yeah. The only thing, the power that you are such a lucky spot because you have a construction background.
Right.
The biggest wrinkle for people like me who have a tech background is I don't know what the make ready cost is. Because again, this is all math, right? It's the denominators, down payment, closing cost, and make ready. If you happen to be able to dial in make ready or get it done for cheaper or do it yourself or whatever that is, your yield explodes. You can get better deals because you have that experience than I can. You're going to spend $4,000 where I got to spend $8,000. Automatically, your yield gets better. You have a great set of experiences that allow you to dominate it, but you can't cut corners. You have to look at your market for 90 days too, right? A lot of people want the darn easy button, and it's not. It takes you 90 days, do the work, build your network, understand taxes, property taxes, insurance, all those things. So I fundamentally believe after 20 years that real estate investing is a skill, and any of us can do it. Stock market, gambling. Crypto, gambling. Real estate, math. And because it's math, it can be done. So that's what I think.
Because it's math, it works, right? Because it's the formula that goes to it. I've talked with a lot of people. I've talked with a lot of really successful rich people, and pretty much all of them did it in real estate. Pretty much all.
Yeah, real estate investing is powerful for a couple of reasons. One is the market's inefficient. What does that mean? Well, Think about selling Apple or Tesla stock. You know what it is every second of every day. Same with crypto. Houses, not the same. You take some house on 123 Main Street. A seller might think it's worth 200 or 225 or 250. You as a buyer might think it's worth those same numbers, but there may be circumstances where you can go in and buy it for 180 or 170. There is not one price for a house. For example, I took a challenge at the end of last year because everybody was saying a crash was coming. It was driving me insane. I said, all right, you freaking people, I'm going to buy something between Thanksgiving and New Year's, and I'm going to show you and document all of it. I bought 2 properties, both of them for 30% less than list price. I'm going to fix them up and flip them. One of them is already listed, and I'm going to document the story and show you how I can make $30,000 between Thanksgiving and Christmas on each property when everybody says there's nothing going on. Do the work.
Mm-hmm. Nice. What do you feel about building for rental?
It's all math. It's all math.
Yeah.
Now lumber's
Have you done
coming
that?
down as I'm not. I am looking to build an ADU because California has created some rules, AB 12, I think it is AB 9, whatever it is, assembly bills that encourage ADU. So I'm looking at it right now. There's a property I have on Pine that I'm looking to add an ADU, but that's it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, like you said, I mean, I got the skills. I can frame a house. I could save the money in framing, at least I can probably do a lot of the work myself. And, anyway, I mean, I guess that would be something to try and consider as far as,
I don't know what, I mean, I always like the idea of what I would look to do. And again, I don't know the rules where you are, but to begin with, I would go try to buy a property with a decent sized lot so that the first house has income, and then you could build a second unit on it. I don't think I would buy raw land, even an infill lot, because I'm always about income. I want the property, the cash flow day one. I want that second unit that you will build over 6 months to be the next thing. I don't want you carrying a negative, what I call an alligator, while this thing waits to be built, because you don't know what happens. Lumber could spike again, copper, whatever, right? Everything you must cash flow, Simon, day one. No hope, no hopium, no thoughts of rainbows and unicorns. Cash flow day one.
Right. What would cause a crash?
Inventory, right? If anybody wanted like a real crash, and let's define a crash, 20% or more, and I'll even tell you 20% peak to trough. We'll stop this 20% in a year. 20% peak to trough would have to be caused by inventory. Now, what could cause that? So I've thought about this a lot. So the first thing that has to happen, I think, is interest rates have to shoot higher. Mortgage rates have to go to 10%. That's step one in a multi-step process. Step two, the economy needs to go into a big recession. We're talking -4% GDP or greater. And then finally, unemployment has to spike. And most importantly, Simon, unemployment has to stay high for a year or more. Because we have already learned, to your point earlier, the banks will just wave a magic wand and give you forbearance for 6 months. How do you have a crash if nobody has to pay? So again, GDP down 4% or more, unemployment 10% or more for a year, and mortgage rates at 10%, because that would kill demand and it would cause supply to stack up slowly. That's the thing that would have to happen. And oh, by the way, none of that, even that for that all happened tomorrow, the price crash would be 2024. Yeah. It wouldn't be this year. Everybody wants a crash today. People calling for a crash today don't understand how the housing market works. It is much slower than all these novice, folks talk about.
Right. I totally agree. And, we're already starting to see where the Fed funds level can actually exceed the treasuries, which is something that I didn't really think was going to, I mean, and not to get too complicated into that, but that's like kind of an unusual situation for the banking system to be sitting in. But yeah, here we are doing it. And a lot of people probably would have said that would never have happened. But yeah, here it is. the things that I think about is what's going to cause those interest rates to rise, right? So if the interest rates are going to rise, what I think a lot of people have to understand is that it comes down to the mortgage-backed security market. And when the mortgage-backed security market has supply and demand just like anything else out there. So a mortgage-backed security is a bunch of jumbled up mortgages that have been put into a box basically and sold off to an investor. And the Federal Reserve is sitting on a lot of these things. And when the idea of them like unloading this mortgage-backed securities into the market, people thought for sure, okay, that's going to cause these mortgage-backed security prices to dump out because they're adding the supply to mortgage-backed securities to the pool of mortgage-backed securities out there for investors to buy. They're dumping theirs out. A lot of people thought that the price was going to fall and the yields were going to rise, and this is what was going to cause that interest rates to go up on all these mortgages, and people just wouldn't afford the housing market. Okay, so that is what occurred. But what I have found is that even though the mortgages have ticked up a little bit here over the last little bit, for the most part, over the last 3-4 months, they really haven't done much but go sideways. And then a lot of times, in that timeline, they
Trending
actually went
down.
down.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't work in lockstep with the Federal Reserve, not the treasuries, not the mortgage-backed security market, none of that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So when everybody hears the Fed saying we're going to keep raising interest rates and people are like, wow, this is going to destroy the mortgage market. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure about that? Because I would have said the exact same thing, 6-7 months ago, but I'm not saying that to them today because it's not what happened,
Well, there's
and,
two things. And
Mhm.
again, I love the fact that I have receipts that I can go back and point to. So one thing is certain: transactions are going to crash. And oh, by the way, a lot of people don't understand that is important.
Right.
But nobody called it. I did. And I take credit for it because I called it 9 months ago. We've gone from 6.5 to 4 million transactions. Why is that important? People don't realize that housing is 13% of our economy. We've lost 2.5 million transactions, which at an average price of 400 grand and an average commission of 5% is like $5 billion. Think about all that commission and all those other things that don't happen because of 2.5 million sales. Housing is in a depression. Transactions down, building down, permits down. That doesn't mean prices have to fall because you have a supply-demand curve over here. And when you're at 4 million transactions and you have 20% of homes being bought with cash, interest rates don't matter. So again, people are distorting transactions, activity with price, and they're not even correlated. They're loosely connected. So I think that's what drives a lot of people crazy.
You're absolutely right about that. And just to add to that, when you have less transactions, then that's less mortgages being added to that pool of mortgage-backed securities to purchase. That means that the supply of mortgage-backed securities for the investors is getting smaller. Supply and demand balances out. That's the reason why we have the interest rates kind of finding their level on mortgages, because this is the level in which that the investors are willing to get into it. So
yeah, it would be a different, like, if this is the whole thing, like if we did 6 million transactions like we did the last 2 years, housing prices would collapse because we would have to spark demand, which isn't there right at these rates. So prices would have to come in. We're going to do 4 million. To your point about mortgage-backed securities, we're not shoving 6 million mortgages. And oh, by the way, Simon, refis are down 87%.
Exactly.
So there's this whole pool of new mortgage-backed securities is, I don't know, a 20% of was last year. So if the Fed's going to, dump on 5 more percent, it's nothing. It's a fart in the wind. Yeah. So transactions matter. Nobody else talks about it.
Right. And that's, because I try to see these things ahead of time, right? I wanted to see the forbearance, right? When everybody comes off forbearance, I was going to see foreclosures rise, right? But I wasn't really thinking about at the time that the forbearances were kicking in, that the home prices were going to explode as high as they did. Like I didn't think that was going to happen. Like I knew prices might go up, but I didn't think that they were going to explode.
In fairness, I didn't think they'd go up that high either. I didn't see that coming.
And so when you add that into the scenario, people were like, well, you said that this was going to happen back ahead. Well, yeah, but things didn't
Things
work out like
change.
that, did
Yeah.
they? Like things changed. I didn't know that the government was going to say, go ahead and not make your payments or rent
Yeah.
or anything like that. That moratoria was something very special,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's actually the second step. So the moratorium was obviously very special, never been done before. But oh, by the way, let's not be confused. That's now a tool in their toolbox. They're going to go like, "Ooh, that worked last time. Let's do that again." If something happened. But here's the point. Point number two that I don't think a lot of people talk about. The moratorium was interesting, but it's how they treated people coming out of it. Right? Black Knight, I believe, reported at the peak 4.2 million people were in forbearance. Less than 1% went to foreclosure or short sales because people, A, had equity, to your point, but B, they just worked it out. They created silent seconds and did 40-year notes and took down. They did wild things to keep people in their homes. That is what I think. I did not expect that, right? The kind of, hey, we're going to take 50% of you, jumble up your mortgage and make you good. That was unusual. And oh, by the way, now they're locked in because they can't move because they got this silent seconds that's going to eat up all their equity if they were to sell. So
explain the silent second.
So let's assume you have a mortgage for $300,000. You don't pay it for a year. You now owe the bank 15 grand. The bank looks at you and says, hey, you can still afford your mortgage, but you can't cut us a check for 15 grand. We're going to take that 50 grand. We're going to call it a second. It's called a silent second because it's now a second lien on your property, right? There's the first at 300, a second at 15 grand, 0% interest, 0 payments. That's the silent part. But when does it come due? When you refi or sell. The bank's going to get paid if you get out of that property. But if you stay there and you don't move, you don't do anything, the 15 grand's just sitting there, paid decades in the future.
You pay it at the end of the loan or something?
At the end, yeah, you'll pay the first off first. And then if you're still there, you'll pay the second.
Nice. Yeah. Because I think about this all the time, where are we going to go? Where is things going to happen? And, everybody has their predictions and ideas, and I try to cover all the bases, I mean, if it's going to be interest rates rising, if it's going to be, inventory rising, what's going to cause it? And, that's the thing I see the most is like, okay, so it's going to take an inventory increase and it's going to be that unemployment. And like you said, it's going to be years down the road before that happens.
Yeah. I mean, you shared a story on my channel. You were fighting a foreclosure for years, right?
Yeah.
See, people don't understand that. They think you get a foreclosure notice and the bank takes it away 30 days later. California's average was 1,000 days. 1,000.
Like almost
That's
3 years.
3 years. Yeah. So, okay, unemployment spikes to 10%. Okay, it's 1,000 days to get out. That's 3 years. Now we're in 2026. I mean, the crash is not imminent. That people calling for an imminent price crash simply don't understand.
Yeah. And so I want to pretend that there is going to be a price crash. I want to get ready for that. So, I mean, really, it's going to be 2 years from now before we see that.
Well, see, that's why I keep harping back to doing the work. You can find a motivated seller today.
Right.
You don't have to have a market crash. There doesn't have to be a bell at the end saying a crash is here. You need to get off your ass, go look at a lot of real estate, find the motivated seller, and buy a deal.
That's it.
Now.
That's the thing. Like, I mean, am I going to really wait 2 years to start earning money? No, right? You got to want to earn money like next week, like tomorrow. Like, like, nah, you're not going to wait 2 years to do this.
No, you do the work. You spend 90 days figuring out your buy box, your area. You go, hey, in my area of Astoria, I think you said, the average yield because it's expensive is 3%. Oh, by the way, I'm going to do the first deal I find that's 6.5. I'm doing it. That might be April. That might be December. But you're going to look every day and you're going to do a deal at 6.5 or greater. Right? It's this whole waiting for the bottom nonsense is.
It's not,
crazy.
No, well, there's, I mean, you can sit around waiting for the best opportunity in the world and nobody ever times it right. Like nobody, like I mean, I study the economy all the time, every day. And I tell you, I am not interested in hitting the stock market because it's like, I couldn't tell you if it's going to go up, down, or sideways at any given moment. I was pretty good at calling out lumber, but I couldn't tell you when the next spike, the next spike in price is going to be. I can tell you we're at a low,
Yeah.
but that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, and how far out it's going to take before that happens, I don't know. So if you want to tie your money up in that, go for it. But who knows when the next spike is going to be? And I couldn't, I'm not going to pretend to play that game. But
Mhm.
when you can punch numbers into a buy box and it can tell you at the end, this is how much money you're going to be making off of this. So
Yeah,
long
and
as
it's better, and it's better than and it's better than average. That's the key to one rental at a time, is we don't do average. Most of us can only buy one deal every year or two. So don't do average. Do the freaking work. Look every day. Use the inefficiencies of the market to get a great deal. Just keep going. Keep writing offers. Keep going.
Yeah, that's it, man. I appreciate everything you share with me, man. I want to ask you some more stuff, but I can't really think of anything that we haven't covered already, man. I mean, there's got to be some more information in there I could drag out of you. I don't know. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about or cover, or
Yeah. So when
anything recently?
when I look at the housing market, almost everybody wants to talk about price. I actually
Mhm.
think, as somebody watching the market, price is the least important. I think you need to, and then the next people want to talk about supply, what's available. The one wrinkle that is most debatable, Simon, to me, is demand. Where's demand coming from? Because obviously we have the millennial generation. We obviously have a lot of roommate situations. We actually have, I think I read somewhere like 43% of millennials under 30 are moving back home or something, right? So we have this whole demand equation that I think is under discussed. I don't even have a great idea on it. Like, is demand going to shoot up or down? Where is that coming? I think that's, if I were going to look at one thing harder, and I am, is where's the demand for housing coming? Because that might be generational. We might be in a work from home environment that's just different. So California and New York, you keep losing. Texas and Florida, you keep winning because of your tax treatment. I think the thing that is under discussed on YouTube is demand for housing. And that's rentals and home purchases. That's the one thing that I'm playing with a lot these days, is thinking about, will demand grow? Will it shrink? What's going on with immigration? What's going on with birth death rates? There's all kinds. The economy is a complicated thing. I think the one thing in housing under discussed is demand.
Yeah. And that's really where it starts getting very difficult, because then you start getting into like a lot of like the social aspects of behaviors of people nowadays, like the family formations and stuff like that, or the
Yes.
lack of. And if
Yep.
you're not into family formation or having kids or getting married and stuff like that, then there's really no point in buying a house, right?
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean,
Yeah.
and so like you have to think, like, is this the way that we're moving towards, where it's going to be less family formations taking place, or are we actually going to have maybe a shift of perceptions again,
Yeah.
and people start moving back into, hey, maybe we do want to have like the more traditional life and traditional roles and stuff like that. I don't see that happening, but it could, in
Yep.
saying like that kind of shift to happen. But if it does, I mean, you're talking so far out, like that's not something that you can really plan for and say like an investment kind of idea for the near future. I mean, that's something you think about like for your kids' sake or something.
Well, I
And
look at it. I look at it because, again, I believe most people want to be housed, right? It's on Maslow, like water, food, housing, right? I think about it because if we're going to have migration shifts that are more permanent than reverse, that's important because that might tell you where to go. If we're going to be less family formation, we don't need McMansions. We need smaller homes, right? There's all like, because again, maybe ADUs, to your point about building, maybe we go and buy lots where we can add ADUs. Just they're smaller, but they're enough. So there's all these things that I look at. But yeah, I just thought I would throw that out there because I think that's the one piece that most people don't talk about is where's the demand coming from, and will we have a demand shift?
yeah, and that's, I mean, it's hard to predict that. where that demand, if it's, it is, a lot of people also talk about like the demographics of like an older population just simply dying off and creating, more inventory that way.
Mhm.
I think, I mean, I could see that, but I think it would be such a slow process that it would just kind of just be absorbed into the system. Again, it wouldn't be like a churning event, like a dramatic thing like a Lehman style crash is triggering. Like
Mhm.
it triggers a crash. But when you have like a slow grind happening, there's I mean, there's no moment of like,
Yeah.
this is your time. It's just like you got to be aware of the situation and just going into it.
Yeah, the
That's where I
silver
love your system.
tsunami.
And
Yeah, the
yeah,
silver tsunami, I think it's called. It's a trickle to your point. Yes.
yeah, and that's like, and that's where I just like, I really like your system. It's just so like, it's kind of like a no-brainer, really. It's just like the work really comes in just your research of different properties
Yeah.
and that part of it. But the actual decision making of whether or not it's a good deal, that's not up to you.
Oh,
That's up to the buy
what's the
box.
number
Yeah.
on the spreadsheet? Yeah.
Right.
Ex-
So
exactly.
that's what's beautiful about the whole thing. It's just more of like, just like, oh, that's a cool house, plug it in. Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
it's
On to the next, on to the next.
uh,
Oh, that one's different. What's different? Oh, it's got a fifth bedroom, or it's got this, it's got that. It takes time, it takes consistency, it is work, but eventually there will be a light bulb that goes off that says this one's different. And then you go
absolutely.
scratch that one and make sure.
Yeah. And that's where, and I think that's where like the strategy really needs to be played for people who want to get into this game. Because again, like, for myself, I'm trying to figure out what it is that I need to do to be successful in life. And when I hung out with all the rich people down there at the Rebel Capitalist, and I'm listening to all of them talk about how real estate is how they did it, I'm like, well, I mean, you
There
can't
might be a
ignore the
signal in
obvious,
this
can you?
noise.
It's like, there's a common theme happening here, So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
I
it's
do
just,
believe real estate investing is a skill. It can be learned at any age. Unfortunately, every skill I've ever picked up takes work and consistency. And most people are lazy. Most people want, they want microwave, and that's just not how it works. But if you're willing to do the work, be consistent, it'll happen for you. It's happened for thousands of people that I've helped over the years. Why not you, right? So just be consistent.
yeah. Um, Here, let's tell a story. One more story before we go.
Sure.
Somebody, talk about a success story of somebody you've helped. Talk about somebody who didn't like down on their dumps or something like that, who figured out, like somebody who's like, it was a really good story. Tell us one of those, and then we'll kind of wind it up here.
Yeah. So I have a whole board full of them. I thought I had one here with me. I can tell a story. So single mom, employed, was hurt in the Great Recession, right? So they lost their home. So they have that baggage with them. Um, they've been trying to figure out how to move forward and not be a renter. So they adopted what's called housing. Basically, so she bought a 4-bedroom home, 2 bedrooms, one's for her, one's for her daughter, and she rents out the other 2 to traveling nurses. And she basically has those 2 rooms paid for. Those pay for her mortgage. So now she is essentially living rent free in her home. She's able to save a lot of money. And then she went on to buy her first rental property out of state. Again, I think house hacking is the cheat code to wealth. If you can do it, if you're in the situation, it's great. If you can house hack a home or a fourplex, 3.5% down. It's nothing I personally have done. It's something I wish I had done. But I do think house hacking is underappreciated and under discussed. And if a single mom with one child can figure out how to get started and then use that, because for most people, other than taxes, housing is your most expensive. If you can make your housing number 0, life gets a lot more flexible. So that's a great story off the top of my head.
Okay, let's talk about her a little bit, just real quick, because I have a friend
Sure.
who's looking to, we'll put it this way: she's not a single mom or anything like that, but she's single, in her 50s, very motivated, very hardworking person, definitely can do a lot of work, herself. Looking
Awesome.
to do maybe a house hack situation. Now, the the individual that you were talking about, what financial condition were they in at the time? Were they hurting? Were they doing okay? I mean, did they have the
Yeah.
finances to back it, right? Because that's kind of a critical thing to think about. It's like, well, if you have all the money in the world, what big deal is it? But
No.
if you're really broke, if you're struggling, that's a different story, you know?
Yeah, I would say she was paying her bills. She had enough for the 3.5% down FHA loan, but not much more. She had lost a lot, during the divorce and the recession, but she wasn't, she wasn't unemployed, for example. But yeah, housing is expensive, right, to getting started. But again, I think most people don't appreciate it. It's 3.5%. If you happen to have served it, it could be zero. I think house hacking is the right answer for most people.
Yeah, and that's really where I think it comes down to, is that no matter what, you're still going to have to be disciplined to get that down payment. You're still going to have to be, disciplined in finding the right properties, one that's going to be able to be within the buy box or the house hack that's available for you. And again, that's a lot of work that's involved with it. But ultimately, that initial kickoff, it's not an easy thing to do, is it?
You gotta, again, it's living below your means is not sexy. It's not exciting. Adding a second stream of income or a side hustle, whatever you want to call it, you have to have more discretion. This is the thing that bugs me most, is most people can tell you how much they make. Most people, like, gross. Some people can tell you what they net. Almost no one, Simon, could tell me what their monthly disposable income is. Most people don't even know what I just said.
Right.
Like, disposable income, what the hell is that?
Right.
Take your net minus all of your fixed expenses. What is the bottom number? For most people, it's under $500. For most people, it's zero or negative.
Or negative. Yeah,
Go
and
figure it out. Triple your disposable income. Everybody should try to triple it.
And that's really where I think, like, a lot of times people kind of misunderstand what it is to have wealth or have money or income, or a lot of people just kind of really misunderstand things. You hear somebody say, like, well, those who make $150,000 a year can really live an easy life. But then you see somebody who makes $150,000 a year, they don't seem to be doing that well. And really what it comes down to is it doesn't really matter how much money you earn. It just doesn't. It's matter how much money you can save. Because if you can earn $150,000 a year, but you spend 155, then you're done. And like it's, you're going backwards, right? But if you can earn, $70,000 a year and save 30 of it, I mean, holy moly, talk about, being able to do something real with your life, is because now you have all the options in the world. But you might be driving, a 99 Toyota Corolla or something like that, because you won't, you're not, like, you're not going out to eat, you're not doing anything like that. You're saving all your money, but yet you're going to be living a better life from that. And so what else ends up coming from that is that when you have that $30,000 that you can save, is that all of a sudden you could go out and buy a brand new Silverado if you wanted to, right?
Good.
But now the availability of being able to get it to you is almost as good as having it. Like, I could go out and get a new car if I wanted to. I don't have to drive this Toyota. But, the Toyota's pretty good for me, gets me around, and I have the money for a new car sitting there that I don't have to go buy a new car that I could if I wanted to with. So it feels like I could have that new car, and that's almost as good. And this is like a wealth effect that you can give to yourself, and pretty soon, it's like you don't look at things the same way anymore, right? All of a sudden, like, spending your money on expensive luxury items instead of trying to get it into income properties or something like that. This is the dynamic shift that happens for a lot of people. So it doesn't really matter how much money you earn. It's all about how much you can save. And that's really where the discipline comes in.
Yeah. One more shout out to Rich Dad or Kiyosaki. I don't know if you've ever, there's a board game he has called Cash Flow, I think.
Oh yeah, my boy and I play. I've met Robert.
Oh yeah, probably at Rebel Capitalist, I think.
Yeah,
maybe?
Rebel Capitalist. Yeah, we sat and had lunch and talked about life. Really, we didn't talk about economics or nothing.
yeah. Someday I'll get his autograph. But the cash flow game actually starts with you picking your career, right? You pick your job, and here's the deal: I can tell you who's going to win the game based on what career they have. Right? There's doctors and lawyers, and then there's like policemen and teachers. If you give me the teacher card, I'll beat you every time. It's because you live in below your expenses. You don't have this crazy lifestyle. If you ever want to really have fun with that game, get you and your boy and make you both doctors. It takes forever to get out of the game. I've done that with people. It's like, hey, if we're both teachers, we're out in 15 minutes. We're both doctors and lawyers. It's like 2 hours. It's just, it's not about the income.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna pull that game out today, and I'm gonna play that with my boy Freddie. We're gonna do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So yeah, thank you. That's a lot. This has been a lot of fun, Simon. Thank you for all you do. I watch your stuff. You have a way of making it not simple but straightforward for folks. You have an economics mind, so thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And I mean, considering that you have all the education within the economic fields and all the experience you have, to hear that is like, it makes me feel good, man. It makes me feel that I'm actually doing this right, and then I'm progressing through, trying to figure this thing out and sharing it with everybody. That's kind of my goal here, is that when I started figuring this stuff out, I realized, man, I was not conducting my life properly. I wasn't making the right decisions. And being economically aware is like, I mean, I think this is going to be the new trend for people, is like, everybody's personally aware or socially aware or whatever, all this awareness out there, but hardly anybody is economically aware. And I think that's really where I think a lot of people end up failing in life, is that if they just kind of understood a lot more about economics, then they would be conducting themselves a little bit,
We would make different
I don't know
decisions.
about better, but definitely differently,
Yeah, different decisions.
So,
yes.
Yeah, that's for sure, man. Thank you, Michael, for coming on One Rental at a Time. Is there anywhere else that we could find you besides the YouTube channel? Because I'm going to put that down below. Is that your place? Is that...
Yeah, YouTube's where to go. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the way I feel too. It's where I'm most active too. So. But yeah, for all the viewers out there, if you want to get in contact with Michael Zuber, I'm going to leave his link down there to his YouTube channel. Go and check out some of the videos that he has done. I know my buddy Kevin has been all over your channel. He just comes to me every day with another video that he's watched.
Awesome.
So excited about the
Thanks,
buy
Kevin.
box and everything that goes on. So yeah. So yeah, he's gonna love hearing that on the channel here. So all righty, Michael. You have a great morning, man.
Bye.